the Special Advisor to the Honorable Minister of Aviation on public-private partnerships, expertise in energy, healthcare, agriculture, urban infrastructure, and digital communication infrastructure. He has over 20 years' experience in developing and implementing, and she's an alumni of the University of Oxford and Manchester. Ladies and gentlemen, Adeyinka Iyanda. Please, a round of applause.
I'd like to invite very quickly to join us on this side, His Excellency, Honorable Premier of Nevis, Honorable Mark Brantley. Ladies and gentlemen, please let's welcome him with a resounding applause. Now, Honorable Mark Brantley is a Premier and Minister of Finance, Statistics, Economic Planning, Education, Library Sciences, Library Services, Human Resources, Industry, Trade and Consumer Affairs, Health, Tourism and Information Technology, Public Utilities, Energy and Foreign Investments. He also served as a former Minister of Foreign Affairs and Aviation, and currently the Minister of Tourism and all the other ministries that I have just mentioned. I'm not going to bore you with a very long, very intimidating resume of the Premier, so I'm just going to ask that the two of them are going to be having a conversation, a tete-a-tete, on the topic pretty very important to us here, private sector opportunities in aviation through concession models. That's going to be your topic for conversation. And I think two of you are beginning to get very friendly. So I'll let you take off from here. Please, let's welcome them to the microphones with a resounding applause, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to join you today at the Afri-Caribbean Summit. I will be speaking, just be giving you an overview on the plans within the aviation and aerospace development, sector, and the plans we have for private sector participation, initiatives, and, within the sector. Under the leadership of the President, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, through the Minister of Aviation, Festus Keyamo, we have, we've been making plans and creating strategies for investments across the various infrastructure within the sector, particularly the airports. We are planning, concession models for investments directly in the terminals, non-aeronautical revenues to increase them. I think that, participation from different parts of the world, we're looking at global markets and focus on, the Caribbean would be of utmost interest. So starting out, we started a phased approach where we are trying to upgrade, the investment in our airports. And I'm sure many of you, of course, all, have been flying in and out of our airports. We're trying to increase operational efficiency. We're trying to modernize the infrastructure. And of course, we're also trying to just attract, investments here. We're looking at the key international airports. That is Lagos Airport, Murtala Mohammed Airport, Nnamdi Azikiwe Airport, which is in Abuja, the Kano Airport, International Airport, Enugu International Airport, and Port Harcourt International Airport. That is as a first phase. We're also looking at some secondary airports across the country, and we're looking at models that can either, combine them or phase them or group them together. Apart from the airports, we are also trying to attract private sector in our cargo facilities. So we have some airports that are also designated for cargo. And we're looking at where the private sector can bring its expertise, its financing, just be a little more efficient and just unlock the value chain in agriculture. So that's just to expand the sector, to open up the economy, off from oil revenue. We also are trying to create hubs, within our airports, not just fly in and fly out. And I'm sure you've seen a lot in the news regarding the recent, our score with the Cape Town Convention, the index. Our score went up from 45 to 75% because we're trying to just unlock the market for travel, for tourism, and a lot of different initiatives. So this CTC score, what it implies, for the sector is that we can now lease aircrafts, across the world. So prior to this, Nigeria was on a blacklist, but the recent impacts, and from initiative from the minister and his team and the whole ministry, we were able to get Nigeria off the blacklist, increase our score, and now we have opened our airline operators to the international market for financing and leasing of aircraft. So that is in a bid to open up the market, expand the hubs at the airports, and just create more travel opportunities within the sector. We're also looking at investments in maintenance, repair, and overhaul facilities. We currently don't have one in the country, or a major one that can do complete checks. So we want to be able to repair, our aircrafts within the country, and also just cater to the West African market and even the Central African market and even the wider African market. So these are various opportunities that are open not just for the global stage, but particularly for our brothers and sisters in the Caribbean to bring in investments, to bring in investors. When I speak to non-aeronautical revenues, I'm talking about retail, hospitality, hotel chains, business parks. So there are quite a lot of opportunities, and we really invite everyone to, watch this space. And then maybe after we hear from my colleague here, I'll be able to discuss more on even the bilateral air service agreements and initiatives we're undertaking directly with the Caribbean nations. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for this opportunity. And we've heard, of course, what Nigeria is doing in this space. We have heard throughout this convention thus far an opportunity to have discussions about investment and discussions about trade, discussions about people-to-people engagements, Africa with the Caribbean, Nigeria with St. Kitts and Nevis. But one of the fundamental requirements for meaningful trade and engagement is transportation links. We had a very robust discussion this morning about agriculture, but there is little value in discussing agriculture if we can't get produce, agricultural produce, from Africa, and more specifically from Nigeria to the Caribbean and vice versa. Similarly, we discussed tourism and the movement of people. But if we can't move our people effectively between our two regions, then again we have some difficulty. So I think this is quite timely as we look at aviation. Those of you who would have been here from the start would have heard my colleagues say that we took a direct flight from St. Kitts to Abuja, and we were here in just about 8 hours. In fact, when we looked at the map on the airplane, we were actually within African airspace within about 5.5 hours. When I left my home in Nevis and told someone that I was going to Africa, they asked me if the flight was about 20 or 22 hours. Because the perception, I suppose, from colonial times is that we are so far apart. We are so far removed. But this flight, direct from St. Kitts to Abuja, 8 hours. And I reflected that it's the same length of time that it would take us to go direct from St. Kitts to London. It is the same amount of time it will take us to go from St. Kitts to Charles de Gaulle in France. And in fact, on our way back, I have seen my itinerary. And I'm going to leave here. I think from here I go to Togo. From Togo I go to Charles de Gaulle. From Charles de Gaulle I go to St. Martin in the Caribbean. From St. Martin I finally get home. I'm not sure which day. So I say all that to say that it is absolutely imperative that we get the political will, we get the private sector in participation in getting air links and transportation links between Africa and the Caribbean. I am here to nominate St. Kitts and Nevis because of where we're located in the Caribbean. I think we're the perfect jumping off point for direct flight into that part of our region. I've heard other Caribbean countries discuss, and I'm sure they'll make the case for a flight from Africa to their destination, but I think St. Kitts and Nevis, because of where we are in the Eastern Caribbean, is a logical choice. Now, we can't discuss people and people engagement and the movement of people unless we also come to grips with the political and diplomatic reality that many people are barred from travel because of visa requirements. And so even some of you in this room who may want to come to the Caribbean, because you're forced to traverse through Europe or maybe the United States or England, since England is now no longer part of Europe, we have a difficulty because you can't get visas to transit through those ports. That difficulty would be entirely removed if you had direct access from here to the Caribbean, your destination in the Caribbean. But as I say that, let me make the clarion call, even here in Abuja, the capital, the administrative capital of Nigeria, I'm told, that Nigerians, all 250 million of you, can come to St. Kitts and Nevis without a visa. But the 52,000 of us need a visa to come to Nigeria. This does not make sense. It is, to me, of paramount importance that we who are on the African continent and those of us who are in the African diaspora, the sixth region, that we are allowed to travel one to the other without let or hindrance. It is, for me, a matter of regret that from St. Kitts and Nevis we can go to every country in Europe without a visa. But we need a visa to come to Nigeria. And we need a visa to go to many countries in Africa, South Africa, for example. That, again, to my mind, just doesn't mesh with our own ambitions to be seen as part of Africa. I'm not sure if within the continent you also require visas to visit each other. I'm hearing you do. But again, I think if we are to fashion that relationship in the way that we are seeking to do so, if we are to look at Africa and the African diaspora as one global Africa, then there's a need to allow our people to move freely and to visit each other and to get to know each other. Because when you get to know us, you'd realize that our drumming is very similar to the drumming you just heard. Our dancing is very similar to the dancing that you just heard. We are African. And so why, as an African, I need a visa to go visit my motherland? This ought not to be the case. And so I'm making the case here. I'm pleading with those of you in the room who have authority, please speak with your voice and allow us to come to our motherland without a visa. For me, that is very important. On the island of Nevis, St. Kitts and Nevis, as we've heard, is a very small country. In fact, we're the smallest country in the hemisphere. And I remarked yesterday that it was of some interest to me that the most populous country in Africa is hosting the smallest and least populous country in the hemisphere. And it demonstrates what we can do when we bring minds and hearts together to make something happen. And so again, I commend the organizers for this event. St. Kitts and Nevis, there is an international airport on St. Kitts, the Robert Llewellyn Bratcher Airport. And that has direct flights from New York, from New Jersey, from North Carolina, I think, certainly from London, Gatwick, forgive me, and from other parts of the world. Nevis, the smaller of the two islands, we have what we call a regional airport. But I can announce that we're in the process of developing that smaller airport on the smaller island of Nevis. And we're trying to create a private jet facility which will allow those of you in the room, and I know there are many who own private jets, to fly directly to us. And that will also allow us to complement what is happening in terms of international aviation on St. Kitts. I believe that if we are to develop effective air linkages between Africa, and since I'm now in Nigeria, between Nigeria more specifically and the Caribbean, that it will require some political will. It will require, perhaps in the initial stages, some budgetary support, but I think it can happen. I think that the people here in Africa must recognize that we in the Caribbean have something of value to offer them. We have a similar culture. We have hospitality, which is second to none. And I feel that the people here in Nigeria will enjoy very much what we have to offer. Fresh air, fresh food, beautiful people, and a culture that will make you feel immediately at home. So, as Minister of Tourism on the island of Nevis, I encourage you to come and visit us. I encourage my dear friend here, who is in the aviation field and perhaps has the ear of the right people, to encourage them to establish the necessary linkages in the Caribbean so that we who are of the Caribbean, we who are of Africa, can have the opportunity to come home whenever we want in a much more convenient way without having to traverse all of Europe in order to get to Africa. In a straight line, we get here easily. In the circuitous route that we now take, it takes us days to travel between the Caribbean and Africa. So if we're serious about these relationships, we want to develop trade, we want more tourists and more movement, we want business ties, then we have to focus on aviation and other forms of transportation between the continent and the diaspora.
I just have additional comments to make regarding facilitating transport links. So last year we've started the ratification of our bilateral air services agreement with Trinidad and Tobago, and this will facilitate direct travel to about 7.5 hours from 24 hours that it is currently between Nigeria and Trinidad and Tobago. This March, we also recently had an engagement with the Jamaican ambassador to also ratify our BASA with Jamaica. So we're looking, those two countries within the Caribbean, we're already facilitating the ratification of those agreements, and we're hoping that we'll be able to cut travel time between Nigeria and those two countries, from 24 hours, like he said, moving around the continent and outside, to about 7.5 hours. And of course, our intention is also to facilitate tourism, trade, investments between the countries. So we'll definitely be looking at exploring direct buses with St. Kitts and Nevis, and we'll be taking that conversation offline, and I'm sure we'll make it happen. And really, we're just trying to expand to other countries, not just in the Caribbean, but so that we can also have other routes through the Caribbean, even to Americas, you understand, rather than always going through Europe or the Middle East. So we're looking forward to that, and we'll definitely be having conversations to take that forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Sir Manuba. I'm the Project Development Manager at Aquarian Consult, and I just wanted to talk a little bit about why this session was very important. Throughout our press for this summit, we got asked this question the most about how easy it is or how difficult it is to get to the Caribbean. And so having this conversation with the Honorable Premier and the essay to the Minister of Aviation was very important, just so we can educate people and so that we can spread the knowledge on what is actually happening to be able to properly bridge that gap. So thank you very much. We greatly appreciate the conversation, and we hope to see the impact of these conversations that will happen offline and off the stage and after the summit. Thank you very much.